My name is Phillip Thorne. I am a golfer who plays at Canterbury, and I've been researching the history of Old Park and this whole area of Canterbury. And in essence, the main history starts 2,000 years ago, when you've got Canterbury as the city centre to the west here, and you've got Fordwich and Sandwich in Pegwell Bay to the east. And when the Romans came in AD 43, and you've got the first Roman road, which is the Littlebourne Road, which runs behind me from left to right, and running parallel to that on the other side of Old Park you have the Surrey Road, both linking the ports where the Romans landed to the city of Canterbury, and this sits right in the middle. The main development of this site came post the 600s with the building of St Augustine's Abbey, following the building of St Martin's Church, with the birth of Christianity with Queen Bertha and King Ethelbert. When St Augustine arrived in 598 and built the Abbey down the road here, this land started to become associated as lands to the Abbey. At first 100 years it was quite a small area, sort of walled garden area, and over the next 400 years they took ownership and occupied this land, and it provided the water supply. It was never farmed because, as you can see, it's heathland scrub, but was a very important part of the lands of the Abbey. And with Fordwich, which was the navigable port to the east here, where any ships coming up would drop their cargo, unload their cargo, and it would either be transported via the Surrey Road, with the Roman road, through to Canterbury, which is owned by the cathedral, or roughly across where we're standing here, across a path which was owned by St Augustine's Abbey. And they didn't get on. They really didn't get on, because it depended on who had the wharfage, as to then had the money for the transport of the goods. And the stone for the cathedral would have come via the oxen cart down the Surrey Road, and across here all the building stone for the Abbey, and all the goods and imports coming in, and of course the Abbey made money. In 1070 the Canterbury Cathedral was built, but just several years later than that the Abbey was rebuilt in 1071 by the Abbot Scotland, who gives his name to this area, which is known as Scotland Hills. In 1076, Bishop Odo of Baya, he of the tapestry, he commissioned the tapestry, and he was half brother to William the Conqueror. Abbot Scotland is pictured on the Baya tapestry, and he was the abbot to the Abbey. And the Baya tapestry is reported by esteemed scholars to be done in the Anglican style, and it's quite possible it was embroidered in England. Now, given that Bishop Odo commissioned it and Abbot Scotland is on it, it's not beyond the realms of possibility for it to have been made just across the park here at the Abbey, of which we're stood right next door to. In 1275, I mentioned previously the conflict between the Abbey and the cathedral. In 1275 there was a big dispute just at the edge of the park here in Fordwich, where the Abbey had leased buildings to the church, or the cathedral, and there was a big falling out, and the abbot's monks threw the cranage and the wharf buildings into the river, and it took 15 years and a king's decision to resolve the dispute. So you can imagine these Franciscan monks fighting over the rights to who would import stuff via this port just down the road, and bring their goods and chattels by ox and cart across Old Park. Within Old Park itself, in the golf club or golf course which forms part of it, there are two areas of ancient woodland, one which runs down the stream through the golf club, and the other one called Chequers Wood, which is at the eastern end of Old Park. Chequers Wood, named possibly as a result of the wild service tree, which is known as the chequer tree, or it might be that the little seeds of the wild service tree, known as checkers, were used to play the game checkers, and also they were used as counting, and it became as in Chancellor of the Exchequer. So our ancient woodland here called Chequers Wood has historical connotations there. On the 30th of July 1538, all change. King Henry dissolved the monasteries. And so all these lands were then reverted back to the king, and it became the hunting park for King Henry. And in there is a 1600 map of this area showing what appears to be a jousting rail across the lower half of the site, running parallel to the Sturry Road. Jousting had ceased as a main contact sport by then, but it was used still ceremonially. So it would be lovely to think that in days gone by, Henry and his successors were riding their horses up and down, jousting ceremonially across Old Park. But at that time it was fenced off, so Old Park would have been fenced, and it was a medieval deer park, expensive to maintain, fully fenced round, and that they'd created the Old Park farmhouse in the middle of the park, which would have been where the ranger lived, because obviously it was a very expensive thing, and to stop people coming in and killing the animals, they were protected, and it was for the enjoyment of the king and his subjects. At the end of the Tudor period, one of the owners of this area were the Wootton family, and they married into the Hales family. Anne Wootton married Edward Hales, and they owned the land from the late 17th century all the way through to the late 19th century. They didn't live here. They built Hales Place, which is the other side of Canterbury, and then they leased out parts of the Abbey, and they leased out most of Old Park to the MOD, who first came here in 1771. Before anything was built, they had tented bivouacs down towards the Sturry Road end of the site, and they would use this for their exercises. Then they built 3 artillery barracks and the like, cavalry barracks down on the Sturry Road side of the site, and used this as their exercise area. And at some stage during their military occupation, I think they built the Reed Pond. There was talk about it being natural. Don't believe that, because it has a straight barrier at the lower end indicating it has been dammed at the bottom of a stream collect that runs out via the natural springs on the hill. The dateline of the military originally occupied the site first in 1771. The barracks were built at the latter end of the 18th century, so we're talking 1790, 1795, through to about 1830 on the north-west section of Old Park. And they occupied that for the next almost 200 years. And then the rest of the land was leased out, and not all Old Park, as Old Park, there was a farm called Old Park Farm, which was stood right in the middle of it, with the Old Park farmhouse, which is just behind me over there. And so it was never farmed for arable. Generally, it would have been livestock and animals allowed to roam. And keep the trees down, and leaving it as predominant, as you can see, as acid grassland. So as we move through to the 19th century, you have the military occupying the main areas. It was farmed traditionally, and with no high intensity agriculture. Old Park was the main farm on the site. There were, at the latter end of the 19th century, there was a big nursery operation, which was operating just above Reed Park by the Kennett family. They occupied it from about 1870 through to 1910, when they went bust. And also during this period there was a lot of gravel and sand extraction via local businesses who had the rights to excavate. But the land has never been developed. So you're talking about a large area on the edge of Canterbury, which has never had any development. The MOD finally bought the land, because they'd leased it up to that date in 1910, and then in 1927 the golf course was created by Harry Shapland Colt in 1927. But prior to that there had been a golf course in the middle of Old Park, a 9-hole golf course which was described as being quite rough, and we believe it was for the army who were stationed here. So it would have been for the officers to have the ability to play golf. And I can imagine one area was on a massive sandpit, so you can imagine it was less a golf course and more a huge bunker as they were playing golf. During the 19th century, so we're talking 1830s through, the perimeter of Old Park did become developed. So you have the military who had been in the north west side of the site, built Howe Barracks in 1938 on the south side of the site, and then slowly Canterbury started to migrate and be developed, and the Hales family had allowed it to be developed for social use. There was a prison there was a hospital there. Obviously they'd allowed the MOD to develop it, and together with residential along the Surrey Road and along the Littlebourne Road, but primarily the park in the middle was just left. It is as you see it, 1,000 years ago, it would have looked like this. Fewer trees, but generally like this. So a detailed version of this is available via a book, which is available on the Friends of Old Park website, and copies of it are available for viewing in the Canterbury Club. I was playing golf during lockdown, and during lockdown we were able to get out and do stuff, and there were people doing some volunteering stuff on the golf course. So I started doing that, and I started thinking, well, what was here before it was a golf course? So I researched the history of the golf course, which is to the east of the site, and then discovered that there was more to it than met the eye, and it was part of Old Park. So once I sort of dug into that, suddenly there was Old Park, and you're thinking like there was not only 2,000 years but going back 600,000 years, and saying this site is of historic interest in a European perspective, plus an English perspective with the Romans, the Tudors, Henry VIII. We've had jousting, we've had fighting monks. There is a story to be told, and it's living history, and it's all in this small part of Canterbury. So I wrote it down.